switch gears a little bit, and we're going to get into the world that affects everybody, which is Windows updates, nuances, the community world of the Insiders program, private previews, and all the things that you can do just to do the validation and testing and everything that Windows offers. So Aria, I am going to hand it over to you if you want to do a quick intro of yourself and then go ahead and present. That would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Carley. Hello, everyone.
Aria.
Hey. My name is Aria. I am a program manager on the Windows Update team. Specifically, I work on the commercial management of Windows updates. So anything related to managing with Windows Server Update Service or Windows Update for Business or any of those fun things is kind of the world in which I live and spend way too much time. So with that, I figured we'd get into Windows updates. Now, I figure this will be way more fun if it's more of an interactive thing. So feel free to post questions. There'll periodically be times I'll ask for questions. You can raise your hand. I'm sure with some certain announcements that went live today, there are plenty of interesting questions on your mind. So please feel free to think of them as we go through. To give you a primer for some of the stuff that you may want to think about, I figured we'd start at the beginning, really at the basics of what are the basics of managing Windows updates. And this is true if you're managing education, school, or if you're managing a work environment or any of these other things. There are 4 basic things that you should be doing. You should be grouping devices rather than rolling out to your entire organization at once. You should roll out to those groups of devices in waves. You should validate early, preferably pre-release. And you should leverage the cloud when you can. It's a journey, so if you're not there yet, no worries. And if you're never going to get there, there are certain places where that's okay. So let's start with the first basic. The first basic is, again, grouping devices. There are 2 key factors when you group devices. The first is risk tolerance. This is basically the combination of the risk tolerance of the actual device itself and the hardware, as well as the risk tolerance of the person you're sending it to. For example, if you're sending it to someone who's really not computer savvy and it breaks, that might take a really long time to get back to you, and that person's gonna be really unproductive. Versus if you're sending it to someone who has a good device, who's pretty tech savvy, who sits near you in the cubicle, or who calls help desk all the time anyway, that's probably a pretty good one. Typical rule of thumb here is you probably don't want to deploy it to someone who can fire you and would do so if their device breaks. Just putting that out there, do with that what you will. The second major thing to consider when grouping devices is the composition that you have in each group. You really want a diversity in each group to make sure that you're checking all of those things that aren't just like line of business applications, but also the hardware, the drivers, the firmware, all of those different things that can cause devices to break or to have issues. You really want a diversity of those kinds of things in these groups. So ideally, you're going to have a ton of different groups with diverse hardware and with different variances of risk tolerance as you go. There's going to be the group that says, I want stuff right away. There's going to be the group that says, don't touch me ever. Update me at the last possible moment before I go end of service. Which brings us to the next basic. How do you roll out in waves to an organization? Well, first, you've already got these groups. So let's say I made 5 groups. My organization, Aria Core, has 200,000 people. I've taken about 1% of them and I've put them in my insider group. These are some devices in the IT department, some VMs, and some of our very best, tech-friendly people who like to be on the latest of the late because they just really enjoy things like Windows 11. The second thing is going to be the 2.5% of early adopters. So these are the first adopters who are going to take it, and they're going to give you a lot of feedback on it if there's any issues. But otherwise, if things break, they're okay. They can go to help desk and figure it out. You're then going to have your early adopters. This might be about 11% of your organization. They are more of your, hey, they're okay. They're not majorly friendly towards tech. They're not majorly against tech, but they're likely to call out if there's an issue. You're then going to split up everyone else into about 2 waves. You've got your broad wave 1 and your broad wave 2, which contains the rest of the organization. And again, you really want to think about this on the axis of how quickly are the issues going to be reported And how mad or unproductive is that person going to be if they have an issue? And I'm sure for any of you who are IT admins on the call, that is definitely something you want to be considering. So, what does this actually look like in practicality? Let's take a feature update, for example. Let's look at the 21H1 feature update that was just released. Well, we actually enabled the feature update for release preview for WSaaS, Woo, Azure Marketplace, and ISOs back in March of 2021. At that point, you should have had a small percentage, about 1% of your organization on it. Obviously, that is flexible depending on what your organization looks like. And then it was released about 2 months later in May to the world. At that time, you might have wanted to go to 2.5% to double check, hey, how is our line of business application working? How is our hardware doing with this new update? Are there any compatibility issues? About 30 days later, you could go to your next group, 30 days later, your next group, and so on, until you've broadly deployed to your entire organization. Again, this is just for example, and this is more of how you think through it. Every organization is different. Some are going to be on the release that was 2 releases ago. Some are going to be on the bleeding edge. Really, the idea that you should be taking away from this is just, hey, here's how I can roll out in different groups and how I can roll out over time to reduce my risk. Because now if I find an issue, I can pause and wait till it's fixed before I roll out to everyone else. And then you don't have to worry about rolling back or having people become unproductive and therefore cost money. Also, if you find a bug, please report it. And you can report it through Feedback Hub, through your partner or technical account manager, through calling customer support. Please report those issues. Because if you report it, we can actually then fix it and make that fix available to you so that it doesn't block your deployments. Now, the same exact thing can be true for a quality update. For those of you that may or not know this, we actually release all of the non-security fixes prior to the security update going live. So everything that's in that Patch Tuesday security update that's not security related, like those features and fixes, they're actually released about 2 to 3 weeks earlier to release preview. And so for anyone who can, I would highly recommend, if you think about the quantity of fixes that are in that security Patch Tuesday release, majority by far are in that non-sec payload. And so I would recommend deploying it to at least some of your organization prior to Patch Tuesday, so that if there is a Sev 0 or something where you need to deploy Patch Tuesday right away, you'll feel much more confident doing so and avoid any breaks. Now, leverage the cloud. I have to pitch this. You all should definitely do this. There are so many benefits to leveraging the cloud, especially Windows Update for Business. And if you're not pointing to Windows Update for Business today, you at least should consider it or think about moving certain update types towards that direction. Why? Because there are built-in safeguards. Specifically, Microsoft, we know about certain app compatibility issues ahead of time, and we document them. But to avoid you having to go and read all of that documentation and then determining which devices would actually have those issues, you could just connect to Microsoft and automatically have Microsoft not offer those devices the update that we know is uncompatible for that device. 2, there's simplified controls and easier management. I know for those of you with WSaaS or task sequences, there's so many knobs and whistles and it's amazing. You can tweak anything. However, I'm going to put it out there that you don't need to, and you're costing yourself a lot of time and effort when there's a much more simplified way to manage devices. We're also right now adding a lot of additional intelligence. If you haven't already, I hope you check out the Windows Update for Business deployment service and all of our recent blogs on such, that we're adding really like rollout intelligence for some different offering mechanisms that can really delay your offering, spread it out over time, lower your risk levels, all sorts of really good stuff. And then finally, the cloud really just enables a better hybrid workforce with COVID, with everyone going into different states of remote or in person, and people taking devices home with them. To make sure that devices are secure and constantly updated, connecting them to the cloud can be a really good option to really avoid those devices having to ping back through VPN to your server to then get the updates. And so please, if you're not already, look into it. If you have questions, feel free to reach out about it. If not, we're going to get to the main reason people are really talking and here. To explore and validate pre-release, obviously. So why should you explore and validate pre-release? 1, you get a heads up on all of the cool stuff that's coming. including productivity fixes, including UI changes that you need to document so that people in HR aren't confused, including the new finance changes to Excel, all of this new stuff, you can check it out early. The second main reason is to find and catch issues that are going to impact your business and your line of business applications and hardware before they actually get released. And in case you didn't know, you actually get free support if you're running release preview builds prior to release. So 2 to 3 months before before GA, we actually offer support for commercial customers who are using release preview and validating pre-release. And that means you're getting your issues fixed prior to release for free. That's kind of great. So if you need more reasons, let's check out what's coming new and what you can go and begin to explore shortly. For those of you who are not aware, Windows 11 was actually just announced today. So we are about to launch the very next version of Windows, and this will be Windows 11. And in this release, there's a huge amount of commercial value, in addition to all of the great new features and UX that Panos talked about in his announcement this morning. Additionally, there's some value that we've already added to Windows 10 that is currently there already for you to leverage. Some improvements over this past year have included cert pinning for WSUS to add a whole new level of security, improvements to compliance deadline, which works for WSUS or Windows Update updates to make sure that they get installed on a device and restarted within the compliance window. We've improved the basically rollback loop so that devices don't get stuck constantly rolling back for quality updates or any other update type. We actually started packaging with one cumulative update, LCUs and SSUs together for those updating from the WSUS and catalog and having them automatically orchestrated on the device, and have improved a ton of documentation. This is really just a sub-list of all of the other massive changes that we've made. So this is just some of my favorites that I felt like highlighting. Now, coming soon and in the works. This is stuff where hopefully when you go and validate Windows 11 and explore it over the next few months, you'll get to check out some of these really cool changes. Specifically, in the Windows Update node, we actually made improvements. So instead of being a long list of all of those Windows Update policies, we've actually categorized them all and subfoldered into 4 different really easy categories to make it clear what you should use for managing Windows updates, what you should use for managing Windows Server updates, service updates, and what you should use to manage experience once an update gets offered to the device. Now, we also really simplified the policies that should be used. Instead of having a policy set of 60 policies, some of which weren't actually even carried over to Windows 10, the admins weren't sure how they worked, some conflicted, etc., we've actually reduced the policy set that we have for managing Windows updates in order to provide a much better experience. And we've also doing some really cool things like specifying which Windows updates come from WSUS versus WU. For those of you people who are scared to go to the cloud, which fair enough, you can actually move over Windows Update workloads one at a time now, which is pretty darn cool. So instead of moving all your Windows Update workload to the cloud, you can move just feature updates or just quality updates or just drivers and then manage them in the cloud while you manage everything else on-prem. Another really cool thing that's coming that just got announced is going to be the unified end user experience. This is still in preview, but it will enable Configuration Manager customers to actually leverage the native UX, the same as Windows Update and Windows Update for Business. So basically, you can have the same end user experience and orchestration, whether you're managing from ConfigMan, from the cloud, etc., and a variety of other new cool stuff. And the reason I'm telling you all of this is basically just, hey, Windows 11 is going to have some cool things. In a month or two, when we go to our commercial preview moment, I would really consider validating, testing it out, deploying it, whether through WSUS, Azure Marketplace, ISOs, or WU. I would really check it out. With that, I want to pause because I just gave a lot of really random information and see if anyone has any questions about anything related to managing Windows updates. Come off mute, put it in chat, raise a hand.
So Aria, this is Carley. I just went through the IM window and I don't see any questions, so I would encourage people that are on the call just to come off mute, like Aria mentioned, and that way we don't have to manage the IM window for this portion, but this is your opportunity to ask all the questions.
No questions, no one, not a one. Honestly impressive.
No questions. I've been monitoring the chat and I don't see any questions at this point, Aria.
That is amazing. We announced Windows 11 internally, and I can tell you we got a lot of questions. So apparently you guys are all just caught up to speed and ready to go. So question for you. How many of you are excited to try out the next version of Windows and are going to do so pre-release?
We are waiting for that.
Definitely eager to try it out, yes.
Awesome. Philip, you have a hand up, or Philippe.
That was just to show that I'm eager to try it out as well. Sorry.
Okay, good. Awesome. Well, I'm glad. You guys will hopefully all be able to try it out very shortly and be able to give all of your feedback on what you think and submit all of those bugs and issues, as it says on the slide.
So, hey, Aria, this is Holly. So for folks on the call, a lot of the audience, they are MVPs and they're highly engaged with the various internal programs and community efforts. And this group is amazing at providing feedback back to Microsoft to better our products and services. I wonder if you can give a quick overview for maybe anybody who's not familiar, how they can get engaged with the Windows Insider program and what that feedback loop looks like. What does it look like if they're providing feedback, as this was just a new release, and if they want to get involved in any of the private previews or validation efforts that you mentioned?
Yeah, for sure. So if you are not currently, it's really easy to get involved and leverage Windows Insider Program for Business. Step one would literally just be Googling Windows Insider Program for Business and following the instructions. There are a few ways to deploy. Right now, as people know, we will soon be making this Windows 11 available to our dev channel. But later on in the release, we will actually go to our commercial preview moment. And at that time, we make it available to Windows Server Update Service, or WSUS, whether you're managing with WSUS standalone or config.man or third party. We make it available through Release Preview for Windows Update for Business. We make it available through Azure Marketplace, and we make it available through ISOs as well. And we start fully supporting it. And at that time, you'll be able to either submit feedback by going through our CSS link, which is our support link, where you can go like a normal support case, fill out the file, fill out the form, and that goes to our typical support engineers, who then escalate to the right feature team. You can, at any time right now, start going to Feedback Hub, which is you just go to the search bar, you type in Feedback Hub, pull it up, and you can then submit feedback from Feedback Hub. And then you can also submit feedback if you're an MVP through any of the MVP channels. You can join or ask to be nominated for the Windows Customer Connection Program, submit feedback there, or any other ways you have if you have direct connections to Microsoft. But in general, we recommend that you submit it through Feedback Hub or through our support link once we have the commercial preview moment. Any questions on how to do that?
So Aria, if you're looking in the IM window, it looks like Nicholas has a question for you.
Nicholas, you're asking if dynamic updates will be made available again to Windows Catalog. We will certainly be publishing the latest cumulative updates to Windows Catalog. We are still figuring out the plan as to what other types of updates will be available there. But I would consider that what the current practice is for Windows 10 version 21H1 and 20H2 will continue to be the current practice for publishing to catalog for Windows 11. Any other questions or thoughts? If not, that's really all I had. I expected more questions, but you can always feel free to reach out to me, whether you can reach out to me on Twitter or on Tech Community or really anywhere. So please feel free, if you have any questions later on, to just reach out.
There is still one question from Koen. What is the best method to patch Windows LTSB with security updates? Is there a possibility with Intune, for example?
That's a great question. So today we don't support updating long-term servicing channel, LTSC, with security updates via Windows Update for Business. We are actually investigating making that a reality, but at that time it is not supported. You have to be in a special channel to get them. But stay tuned because we will be investigating that in the future.